Time for a look at what's making the front pages of the international newspapers, and taking us behind the headlines is Joseph Danquah. Good morning, Joseph.
Yeah, thank you.
Plenty to talk about in the international papers. Let's start with the South African Times. And Prasa blew billions. The Axed agency boss, Lucky Montana, fingered in 6 of 19 instances of impropriety. How do we say this?
It's becoming a byword for the South African system now. That corruption is being labelled as a corrupt system now. Basically, it's going to the heart of the culture of those in power now and those who have taken over after 21 years.
ANC in power, massively in power. Is this that old saying about sort of power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely?
It seems some of the trends from the President Zuma's spending of millions on his personal home and other instances of corruption. It seems that it's becoming an ingrained cultural practice, which over the years is now becoming, accepted.
South Africa wasn't exactly in the top 5 of least corrupt nations, but surely this is a sign that things are just not getting any better.
Yes, it is, and usually when many of these investigations are carried out, those who are said to be perpetrated, who perpetrated those corrupt practices have not been prosecuted, and therefore it seems that people will say to themselves, we can get away with this without any repercussions. And I think that is very bad for the country, because an institution of corruption, if an institution is corrupt, it cannot stand the test of time, because, ANC will not be in power forever. And if they leave a legacy of corruption being the bedrock of their governance, then it's going to put the country under a lot of pressure.
Well, just to give a little more detail, this story is about the public protector, Thuli Madonsela, who of course was involved in the whole Nkandla affair, saying that the looting of public funds was on a massive scale by senior managers at the Public Rail Agency of South Africa. More than 2 billion rand is thought to have been misappropriated. And that's a huge amount of money in a country where that money should be invested in the system.
Yes, as you're saying, the system, they've still got the problem they had during the apartheid era of social amenities, like water, electricity, and housing, which is a major problem within South Africa at the moment. And many of these things, you can see that jobs are not being created, people are not getting their income levels, and therefore they start to blame foreigners. As you see, they're taxed. These are, they are problems which relate one after the other. If you're not able to invest within the social sector or create jobs, people become disillusioned, and therefore they start causing mayhem in the society. And you look at South Africa, which has a very high crime rate. These could be some of the reasons why. Because
this is high-level white-collar crime, not blue-collar.
But still crime.
Let's stay in South Africa. Cape Argus. Oh, I love this story. ANC. The ANC, of all people, is suing the city over the logo that it chose. It turns out that city chiefs had selected the logo, cost around 300,000 rand to do that, and the ANC are spending time and effort suing the city over the image they picked, suggesting that people should have voted.
I don't know why they are taking on this case head on. They say they have a good case, saying that people should have put across what the ideas, suggestions and the ideas.
Narrow it down to 3 and let's have a vote.
Yes, that's what they believe in. But I don't think this should be an issue. The council want to put up a corporate, image which they think would push the city forward, which I think is very important.
Well, they're talking about the fact that in the Western Cape, at least nationally, there is nothing in the law that says that they had to go to the people to do this. It was a kind of corporate, like you say, a corporate rebranding exercise. And I'm not exactly hearing sort of South Africans there having an uprising going, this is disgusting. So why do you think the ANC are getting so sort of het up about this?
You see that some of the tactics to divert people's attention from their failures in governance. Because if you start picking on these petty issues, which I think doesn't have an effect on the governments of that area. I don't see why they are taking it head on. But the council was saying that if they were to bring back the old logo, it would cost them more.
Well, they're talking about that it's not just the cost of designing that logo, it's how much it would cost to roll it out across the city. But it's quite interesting because they refer to the Municipal Systems Act not covering this issue, and that the ANC is saying it was an unlawful administrative act. But what seems to be even more bizarre is that when they rename roads in South Africa, and we've had lots of those, Johannesburg is a great example where main roads are renamed after people like Miriam Makeba. That has to be sort of voted on and checked, and has to go up to the highest management levels. It just seems weird that just a logo is causing so much problem.
Yeah, I don't think it's much about nothing. I mean, the ANC, as I said earlier on, has to look at real important issues. The economy of South Africa is not doing too well.
You think it's a diverting
Yes,
tactic?
It's diverting because you see, they're real bread and butter issues which need to be addressed.
Yeah.
And these things are just sidetracks. They need to look at the real issues which are facing the country economically and politically.
Let's have a look at the USA today. We've got a big story about the stocks plunging there. We'll talk to Laurie about that. The story that I want to pick up on is this special report by the paper about the police secretly tracking cell phones to locate not just the big criminals, but the little ones. This POS are like a suitcase. They run around creating this temporary mast, and they use it to help pinpoint where these criminals are. Are we getting a bit sort of surveillance mad here? Yes,
surveillance mad, but it's at I think the cost of it, not in terms of monetary cost, but in terms of human lives. I mean, the world is in a state whereby now there's a lot of terrorist acts going around across the world. And there's a need for them to track these terrorists down to their source. And I think this is in place. I mean, if you've got nothing to hide, why are you scared of this? Because the thing is that this act of, surveillance has saved a lot of lives, even though petty crime has been, found here and there.
But they're suggesting that the police are doing this without even letting the lawyers know and the judge know that this is how they track them down. I mean, when we're talking about privacy issues, where they can track hundreds of people simultaneously this way, and they've been using it to search for a car thief all the way down to the doorway of a public housing complex, and a woman who made a string of harassing phone calls.
Yes, but there's a bigger picture to it. Even though these petty crimes have been uncovered, the bigger picture is to be able to track down big-time terrorists. Yes, there is a level of snooping here, or to getting into the privacy here of individuals, but there's a need for these acts to be pinpointed at those who are trying to cause mayhem in society. Because look, let me tell you something. With the IS,
but where do you draw the line?
Yes, there's a fine line there, but then that is where
somebody's just making harassing phone calls. That's one thing, but potentially sort of blowing up a public building or something like that. That's different.
Then harassing phone calls could then lead to something else, because one misdemeanor could lead to a bigger picture, which eventually could uncover bigger plots. So you see, this thing, I don't see anything wrong with it. Unless you're up to something dodgy, then you shouldn't be scared of this. This is to help me and you, James.
So says Joseph Danquah, and there we leave it. Joe, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Wish I had more time to go through more of the papers, but thank you. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.